Thank you, Roger. I saw on Facebook the other day that one of our kids here, actually it was Bennett, lost his first tooth this past week. Some of you might have lost your last tooth this week, I'm not sure, but anyway, losing that first tooth is, seeing that picture, it just made me think that's kind of a big deal when you lose your first tooth. It's kind of exciting. I remember working. In fact, I started on a Sunday night. I didn't even have a loose tooth, but by the time church was over on that Sunday night, I had one. And so that was all kind of very exciting. And typically, though, that tooth especially is one that parents often are involved in the process of helping to remove because kids haven't been through that before, and you're helping sometimes even actually pull or extract it. Caroline has been involved in every facet of our kids' life except that. And for whatever reason, blood doesn't bother her, diapers, stomach stuff, none of that really bothers her. But that whole tooth thing really kind of grosses her out. So that's always been part of my territory. And so with 6 kids, I have pulled a lot of teeth. So if you just like simple dental work, if you just stop by Monday through Friday, no. But I have helped pull a lot of teeth, and thankfully it doesn't bother me. And because of that, I have developed quite a bit of experience in pulling teeth. So if you need some help with that, I can, especially with children, assist you. And I've got friends who are aware of the fact, hey, you've got a lot of kids, you've helped do this. And so I've got multiple friends that not only have I pulled my kids' first teeth, I've pulled their kids' first teeth. In fact, my friend Alan, I don't remember I think it was his daughter. We were at his house one day, and his daughter's tooth was loose, really loose, and they had been trying to assist her and encourage her and get this out, and I think they had tried to pull it, and nothing was working out. And so they said, hey, Michael's here. He's pulled a lot of teeth. Look at all of his kids. They look like jack-o'-lanterns. Why don't you try... Why don't you trust him to help pull their teeth? And so they were like, yeah, maybe. And like I said, let me see how loose it is. And so she opens her mouth and she can like flick it with her tongue. I mean, it is. I don't even know how it's still there. And but they have tried apples and they have tried all this stuff. But at this point now, she won't even let them touch it. And she doesn't want this. I don't know how she thinks this thing's going to come out. But anyway, so the thought is maybe, and she's maybe I'll let Michael do this. And so I get a little piece of napkin or paper towel or something, and so she comes over to me, and she's very hesitant, but I just grab it real quick. And then so she pulls away, and she's like, no, I don't want you to do it. I'm like, I've got your tooth. and I'm sitting there holding it. And it was so easy to grab because it was just barely connected. Unless you're talking about baby teeth, you don't want your teeth barely connected. Your plumbing, you don't want it barely connected. Your seatbelt, your tires, your lug nuts. You don't want stuff barely connected. And the truth is this, as a follower of Christ, when you or anyone becomes a follower of Jesus, not only do you have a relationship with Him, but you become part of something that is bigger than just your relationship with Christ, but you become part of all of the not just the team, but the family of those that are also His followers, that are part of His church. And He wants us to have a connection that is not just hanging by a thread. He wants us to be those that have relationships, but not just relationships, but meaningful relationships with each other. We're thinking about this as part of a series we started at the beginning of the month, thinking about some of the core essentials that characterize the early church. And you can read about this in Acts chapter 2, where it says that they committed themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the breaking of bread, to fellowship, and to prayer. How we describe it very simply is this, that we want to make sure that we are biblically grounded, gospel-centered, prayerfully focused, and today we want to think about being meaningfully related. So here's the question. Meaningfully related doesn't sound like something that you can do a litmus test for. It's not something that you can do blood work for that goes, oh, you've got a 74, so yes, you are meaningfully related. So how can you tell? That sounds so subjective, so how can you tell as a follower of Christ if you're experiencing a meaningful relationship with the other followers of Christ?
Now, the cliche tells us that a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I can't give you an actual picture, but I can give you a word picture that's given to us in Acts chapter 12 that really paints for us what it looks like to be meaningfully related. Look with me in your Bibles to Acts chapter 12, and we're going to be picking up this midstream in a story that we'll get the context here in just a moment. But in verse 11 of Acts chapter 12, we're told that when Peter came to himself, he said, "Now I know for certain that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's grasp and from all that the Jewish people expected." As soon as he realized this, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John Mark, where many had assembled and were praying. He knocked at the door of the outer gate, and a servant named Rhoda came to answer. She recognized Peter's voice, and because of her joy, she didn't open the gate but ran in and announced that Peter was standing at the outer gate. "You're out of your mind," they told her, but she kept insisting that it was true, and they said, "It's his angel." Peter, however, kept on knocking, and when they opened the door and saw him, they were amazed. Motioning to them with his hands to be silent, he described to them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. "Tell these things to James and the brothers," he said, and he left and he went to another place. This, and you may not notice it at first, but if you pause long enough, I really think that this gives to us a snapshot, a word picture of what it looks like to be meaningfully related to each other. So what does it look like? Well, I think based on what we see here, the first thing we see is this. You want to share the stuff of life with your church family. You want to share the stuff of life with your church family. Now, obviously, we picked this up midstream, so let me just back up for a moment. If you look at the beginning of this chapter in verse 1, we're told that about this time, King Herod violently attacked some who belonged to the church. Herod is in his position as king of the Jews because of the Romans. And so he likes this job. He likes this gig. It is a great position. And so one of the ways that he can ensure that he keeps that is to make sure that those who are under his reign, under his control, that things are going well and people are pretty happy. And so one of the things that he has discovered is this. He's got all of these Jews that so many of them, they couldn't stand Jesus. The religious establishment, they hated him. In fact, they were the ones that were really spurning against him and motivating the decision to bring about his crucifixion. And so the death of Jesus made them very, very happy. And sometime in less than 5 years, we believe, from the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, this has occurred. And so he realizes, if I do something to these followers of Jesus, it's kind of like throwing the crowds a bone, and they like that. Maybe I'll do that again. And so we're told, when he saw that what he did then was to execute James, who was John's brother. That's John the Beloved. That's John the Gospel writer. He executes him. People are like, yeah, we got another one. So Herod's like, well, they kind of like that. Let's see if we can do another one. But if we're going to do this, let's maximize the impact. And so let's get the biggest bang for the buck. And so at this point, you need a high value target. So we need to pick a Christian that is well known, and we need to pick a name that is well identified as being connected with Jesus. And Peter is a good individual. He's the leader of the early church in Jerusalem. So Peter is arrested and he's thrown in jail. The expectation, the plan of Herod is at the end of Passover. And immediately on the heels of Passover follows the Feast of Tabernacles. At that point, they'll bring him out and execute him. And the city's full. They'll be so happy. They'll be so elated by Herod. And they'll be like, Mom, we love you. Thank you. And so Herod will be happy, the people will be happy, Rome will be happy, maybe he'll get a raise, maybe he'll get another share of the taxes. This is going to be really great for him. So he's got this high value target, and he wants to make sure that he stays safe until he's able to kill him. And so we're told that Peter was arrested, put in prison, verse 4, assigned 4 squads of 4 soldiers each to guard him, intending to bring him out to the people after the Passover. So we want to make sure that nothing happens to our golden goose until we're ready to cook him. So that's the plan. So we're told, verse 5, Peter was kept in prison, but, verse 5, the church was praying fervently to God for him. Now, in verse 6, the plans are getting closer. And maybe they've got the stage beginning to set up, and they're starting to put out flyers about the execution of Peter that is looming. But that very night, we're told that Peter, verse 6, was bound with 2 chains, sleeping between 2 soldiers. So he's behind bars, chained, and he's got guards on either side of him. There are sentries in front of the door that guarded the prison, but an angel of the Lord appeared. There's this light that shines in the cell. Peter is awakened. It's an angel. And the angel says to Quick, get up. And miraculously, these chains that bound him, they have fallen off. He says, get dressed, put on your sandals. And he did. The power of God, the power of God through this angel somehow, and it could just be described as a miracle. The guards remain asleep. The cell is able to be opened, and Peter is able to leave the prison. In verse 10, he's past the first and second guards. He comes to the iron gate that leads into the city, and it opens by itself. And he goes outside, past one street, and suddenly the angel left him. So now, he's all by himself, and he's out of jail. Now, some of you may be able to testify to what it's like. Others just have to imagine. I have to imagine. Getting out of jail is a big deal. It is. That is something of real and notable consequence. Even if you have ever spent a night in jail or a term in jail, the reality is this: I don't think there's anybody here who's ever been on death row. That's where Peter was. His execution was looming. It was just around the corner. So he has been unjustly arrested, unjustly going to be sentenced to die by execution, and now he's out of jail. Well, once you get out of jail, what do you want to do? Do you want to go to Disney World? I mean, do you want to go to McDonald's? What do you want to do? You want to let people know. And who is it you want to know? People who actually matter to you. What is so interesting is that Peter doesn't go to his family's house, to his biological family's home. That's not to say that there weren't perhaps any relatives here, but what it is that he does is that he goes to the place where seemingly he is aware that the church is gathered, where his church family is, where other believers are gathered, and they have specifically gathered. He doesn't know this, but they've gathered for a prayer meeting to pray for Peter, for his release, for his safety, for his life, for all of these things. And Peter shows up there. Why? Because something of consequence has happened to him. And what does he want to do? He wants to share that with those that are part of his spiritual family. He wants to share that with the church. Is it that he wants to do this because he's got a juicy story, because there's some great details and then people are going to ooh and ah? No, it's very simply this. When things that matter to you, good or bad, up or down, when you experience those things, what do you want to do? You want to let people in your life who matter know about it. You get a ticket today. You're probably going to call a friend. You're going to call a family member. You're somebody that's close. You might not put it on Facebook, but someone who's close to you, you'll tell them that. You get a raise. You might not put that on Facebook. You might not tell the world, but you're going to tell people that are of consequence to you in your life. And who does Peter, what's the very first place that he goes to share? Guys, I am free. God has delivered me. He has done this amazing thing. Not only has he granted me freedom, but he has preserved my life. To whom does he go? He goes to the church. He goes to the fellowship of believers. Is it just because this was Peter? No, but because I think this characterized what the early church looked like. They weren't just connected nominally. They weren't just in relationship in a nominal way, in name only. They were meaningfully related. And meaningfully related looks like this. As you are experiencing life, as it goes up, as it goes down, you're sharing that with other believers. Why? Because they matter to you. Because they are of consequence to you. One of the things doing this, as we share the stuff of life, as we share the ups, do you know what that does? It causes the wins to feel even greater. But on the flip side, as we share the griefs, as we share the sorrows, it causes the downs to feel even smaller as we bear each other's burdens, as we celebrate each other's joy. The early church, what Peter did, a meaningfully related fellowship, what they did is that they shared with each other the stuff of life. When I was a kid, there was a little boy, his grandparents lived down the street from me, and his name was Sid, and every afternoon after school, Sid, he would ride the bus home, and he would stay at his grandparents' house until his mom came and picked him up. And Sid and I we were thick as thieves, and we even looked alike. Both of us little short, pudgy, blonde-haired kids, and we would play every afternoon together, and he was my best friend in the world, and I loved hanging out with him. He loved hanging out with me, and we were like this. Now, at this point, I just saw recently on Facebook, Sid lives, I think, in Nevada now. I saw that he got married, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And he and his wife, they just had a baby that may be 6 months old. I also saw that his mother died about 6 months ago as well. But it's interesting, when he got married, I didn't get a wedding invitation. Like once this child was born, like he didn't send me a picture or a text or anything to say that it happened. When his mother passed, I didn't go to the service. In fact, she had already been buried for weeks by the time I even saw the obituary online. He didn't tell me any of that. But then by the same token, I never told him when I met Caroline. And it didn't even occur to me to send him a wedding invite. And when one of our 800 children was born, I never notified him whatsoever. When my father passed, even though he knew my father, I didn't let him know any of that. Well, why is that? Well, it's because we are barely connected, not meaningfully related. There's a shared past many moons ago, but Sid and I haven't spoken to each other in probably 30-some years, and it's not that there is hostility or angst towards each other. It's just that he has done his thing, I have done my thing. He's living in his life, I'm operating in my lane, he's operating in his lane, and that's just how we kind of operate. Listen, the church should not look like that, where we're all just staying in our lanes. In truth, so much of our culture looks like that, where we are so isolated. And you get into your home, you pull your car into the garage, you shut the door, and you go in, and that's it. And the only interaction you have is maybe at work, perhaps at school, or that which occurs on social media. And those are connections, those are relationships, but they're not meaningful. They exist in name only. And one of the ways that you can tell that they are not meaningful relationships is this. When stuff that is meaningful happens to you, with whom do you share it? And it's not because you want to share secrets and you have no skeletons in the closet. That's not the aim. The thought is this: stuff that matters to me, I share it with the people that matter to me. And it is the case that those who are part of the family should be those that matter to us, if indeed we are not just related, not just connected, but meaningfully so. We experience where we are sharing the stuff of life with each other when we are meaningfully related, but it's also true this: you experience the benefits of a shared life. You experience the benefits of a shared life. Now, is it that we should be just sharing stuff because inquiring minds want to know? And just so that people can have a sense of what's going on? Now, part of it stems from the fact that it helps us remember the fact that we are not islands unto ourselves. It helps abate any feelings of loneliness and isolation when we're sharing the stuff of life. But it is more than that. As we share the stuff that matters to us with the people for whom it matters, and they matter to us, and we matter to them, what begins to happen is that they begin to act in demonstrably caring ways. They begin to respond in ways and to do things that demonstrate there is a meaningful relationship. Now, in this passage, we see one of the things that they do to demonstrate, and this the plan was that, hey, let's gather together to show Peter that we care. No, it's because they cared, because he mattered, because they mattered to him. What are they doing? They have gathered to pray for Peter. And it seems like it's not just a couple of them, but it's like the whole church has gathered together. They want to pray for Peter. And it's not merely because it's Peter and he is a leader in the church, but because he is such a meaningful part of the church. He's such a meaningful part of their life. They've been sharing life, and part of that means that the ups they share, but also the downs. And part of sharing the downs is this: we actually pray for each other. When we are experiencing a shared life with other believers, it results in demonstrably tangible ways. Perhaps chief among those is that we pray for each other. Now that sounds so simple, it sounds almost even trivial, but I want you to step back in your mind and realize what's going on. When somebody is praying for me, when somebody is praying for you, when they're actually doing this, what's going on is that they are talking to the one who made everything out of nothing, who has the power over death, hell, and the grave, who has the ability to grant eternal life, who has the ability to bring healing, who has the ability to redeem, who can do all that. They're talking to the one who can do any and everything about you. They're using part of the conversation that they've got to talk to the God of the universe about you. That should matter. That should be of consequence. But it also should not be a surprise. Because when we are having meaningful relationships with each other, when we are meaningfully related with one another, as we see here in the early church, there's going to be demonstrable ways that this is demonstrated. We're going to pray for each other. There's likely going to be all kinds of other stuff. Ministry through casserole. Shared time with each other. Somebody just sending you a call, a text, an email, just checking in on you. But with respect to praying for each other, let me just say one more brief word about that. So many times we use that, especially in the life of the church, almost as a word filler. Somebody tells us something that's going on and we just say, oh, I'll be praying for you. Because that sounds better than blah, 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 right? Sounds very spiritual. Oh, we will be praying for you. Let me just say this. God is not honored by dishonesty. And so if you're not going to do it, don't say it. And if you're like me, though, and you can't remember anything, as soon as you walk away, just even make it brief. Do what you said and actually pray for them. It doesn't have to mean that you stop for an hour, but even for that brief moment, you said, I'm going to pray for them, and you want to do this because they actually matter. And you can talk to the God of the universe about them. That's big. Because that matters, because they matter. They matter to you, you matter to them, and that's why you do this. That's a big deal. The church operating in demonstrably caring ways. Praying for people, providing meals, sitting with, helping to meet financial or material needs. All of these are ways that you have and I have and so many others have witnessed God's people being a blessing to others that are a part of the family. I have seen multiplied occasions where there are those who were simply brought to tears just describing what the church family had meant to them and how it was that they had been ministered to and cared to. So many times also I have seen individuals that they have no biological family. Maybe it is that they don't have any children, or perhaps they've outlived everybody else. And the dearest people on earth are not those that are physically related to them, but they're their spiritual kin. That really matters, and that is of such enormous consequence. I have heard these stories of people sharing this, but on the flip side, I have witnessed the opposite. I have seen individuals or come to know of individuals who go through a difficult time. And on the backside of that, I have heard, sometimes directly or sometimes indirectly, people launching verbal torpedoes at the church or at me or at somebody else. Say things like this. Well, no one ever came to see me. No one ever brought me anything to eat. Nobody called me. Nobody emailed me. Nobody did anything. I put something on Facebook and I didn't see many people that clicked on like or that little care emoticon. Sorry bunch. Beyond that, I've heard statements like this over the years where folks will say this, listen, I've been a part of that church for 29 years. That sorry church, that sorry preacher. I've been a member for all those years and they didn't do anything. Nobody showed up, nobody did anything. And on more than a few occasions, I've had to have some very pointed conversations with some folks to say in response this. Sincerely, I am sorry that you felt that way. I really am. But the simple truth is, people don't really know you. And sometimes it's because somebody checked out. They are a member of the church in name only. They're a part of the church in name only, but they haven't been connected at all. They've been completely absent for years on end, but then they're going to get nasty about, well, the church didn't do anything. You checked out a long time ago. Nobody knows who you are. Just it's like taking the phone book and pulling out a name. You are a complete stranger to them. Why should you expect people that you are indifferent to be anything other than indifferent to you? If they don't matter to you, why should you matter to them? You don't even care enough to see them on a Sunday. You've completely checked out, but now you're going to lambaste and come out guns a-blazing? Seriously? You don't get to do that. You stop that because you are out of place. You are in the wrong. This is what you did. These people don't know you. And maybe it is that some of you have even here today, you would say, you know what, I am in that boat. And I can say right now that this is something that I have been through and nobody did X, Y, or Z. Michael didn't do X, Y, or Z. Jamie didn't do X, Y, or Z. Dan did something, the church didn't do X, Y, or Z. And on more than a few occasions, these are instances many times where you have an individual that the only connection that they have with the church is Sunday morning worship attendance. And let me just tell you, if the only touch that you have with this church family is at 10:30 on Sunday mornings, you are like that tooth in my friend's daughter's head. Just barely connected. And yes, people might exchange pleasantries with you. They may speak to you. You may speak to them. We'll talk about the weather, the Super Bowl, just nonsense. But you don't actually know them. They don't actually know you. And so then trouble comes, and you're like, well, that sorry bunch. Peter experienced the benefits of a shared life because he actually shared his life with them. They shared their life with him. And so what happens? You've got people that are so blessed, excited to hear his voice, they leave him locked out of the house. In fact, they are so connected with each other, the servant who recognizes Peter's voice, the servant recognizes Peter's voice. It's not the church member, it's the servant even knows who Peter is. That's how connected, meaningfully connected and related they were to each other. So this kind of paints a picture for us, but in the end you say, well, Michael, I'm not sure. How exactly can you tell? How can I tell if I'm meaningfully related? Let me give you just a few questions. If you had good news among those with whom you would share that, who or how many in the church family would be included? So if something good happened, are there people within the church family, maybe even and hopefully multiplied people, that you would want to share that with? Now, if it's the lottery that you won, you understand keeping that silent. But no, but if there is something meaningful, something positive that's happened to you, are there people in the church family that you would want to share that? Secondly, if you had some need, some burden apart from any staff member, are there others, any in the church family, that you would reach out to? There's some trial, there's some difficulty that you're facing, there's some hurdle that you are staring at. Outside church staff, are there any within the church family you would reach out to? Third, if you stopped attending for a month, 6 months, a year, who would notice? If you just walked away, if you just completely checked out, who in the church would miss you? If you just checked out, who would you miss? The answers to all of these questions I can't answer for you, but I believe as you think through them, they help answer the question for you. Am I meaningfully related, not to my church club, not to my church organization, not to my church institution, but to my church family? He wants us not to just be related, but meaningfully related. The question is, are you? Will you bow your heads with me?